cards. Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're starting a new project, and we're doing a universal carry holster, and we're going to do it without the clip. We're just going to do the outside the waistband carry. And I've got a couple of examples here, and then I'll show you how we're going to make our own pattern. And this is it's empty. It's a medium size frame pistol. And the nice thing about these universal carry holsters is they're quick, easy to make, and they'll hold anything from a small frame pistol, revolver, to a medium size, to a large frame. So they're very universal of what they can hold, so you can have one holster to carry several different types of guns. So if you like to carry different types, different sizes, at different times for different things, that's what this is handy for. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, I've got a couple of examples here, like I said, that I've purchased in the past. This one's lined with some type of nylon. It's leather on the outside, or as they say, genuine leather, which I don't think that's actual solid leather pieces. I'm not sure. You have to look that up. What I've read, it's pieced together, if it says that, but you can look that up, take a look, see what you think. But this one says the same, and it does have kind of a strange feel to it. It almost feels like a vinyl rather than pure grain leather. So these are lined inside. You can either line them or you can unline them, leave them unlined. Now the thing about leaving it unlined is then the gun or your pistol is going to rub against your belt if you're wearing this like we're going to do on the outside. So you got to keep that in mind. If you don't want that touching your belt, then you're going to have to line it with something, probably a pigskin or a thinner piece of leather. So we're going to do it unlined to start out with. So the first thing I'm going to do is, you may not have one of these to make a pattern off of, so I want to give you the dimensions of this so that you can make your own pattern. So first thing I'm going to do is, if you had one of these, you could just draw around it, make your own pattern, make it quick and simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the top width, which is 5 inches, and we'll end up making a front and a back pattern. So we'll mark that at 5 inches, and I am going to cut this across the top. I'm going to make a mark across the top so that I can square that up, because I want my pattern to be square also, just like I would if I was cutting a piece of leather from scratch. So I'm just going to put my straight edge right on that mark. cut right on that line, and then cut that piece off at the top, get rid of that, so that I know I have a good straight square pattern material to start with. And I can actually see now, and I can use my grid if I want to square that up. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to cut this bottom off too, so if I move this up, let's see if I can see. Yeah, if I move that up, this piece is small enough that I can actually see my other lines on my grid, my vertical lines. So let's go ahead and square that up and draw our 5-inch lines all the way down. So there's our 5 inches wide, which is what our width is here of the universal holster. Then let's measure the height, and that is 3 1/4 inches. So you'll want to come down from the top, 3 1/4. I'm going to do that on each side so I can get a nice straight line. And then draw your horizontal line at 3 1/4. Now remember, we're going to need 2 of these patterns. We're going to need one for the front, one for the back. This one, what's strange about it, or at least I thought it was they did a clip so you could, I guess, do inside the pants, and it still has the belt loops in it. So I guess you could do it outside or inside. But then on the other side, they did the slits for the belt for outside the pants. So I'm not really sure why they did it on both sides. But on this one, you can see it's just one-sided, but it does have the clip. So that made a little more sense to me that, yeah, you could carry it inside the waistband if you wanted to using the clip, or outside the waistband if you wanted to use the belt. So again, I guess they're just trying to make it as universal as possible. So let's go ahead and let's do 3 1/4 inches down again for the back, so we can have a front and a back pattern, because I'm just doing the belt slots on one side. So that'll be my inside, or what I would call the back, and then the other side would be smooth like this, which would be my front. So I'll go ahead and draw that line. So then if you want to, you can go ahead and mark it. I'll just mark it front, back. On the front, in parentheses underneath, I'm going to put outside. On the back, I'll put inside. Just so I don't get confused if I lay this aside or pull it out at a later time to make some more. I'll know exactly what I'm looking at here. So I want to get these corners, these rounded corners. I don't want to just make this square like my pattern looks right now. So I want to get those corners rounded. So I went through a bunch of my French curves that I just dropped one on the floor. Went through a bunch of my French curves, and I found one that's got a nice curve to it, nice tight curve like this has on it. This one's a little wider, curve than the brown one. As you can see the brown sticking up there. But I like the curve on the brown a little tighter. So what I did was I went through and found a French curve that matched that as close as possible. So what I want to do is I want to be able to just put that on the lines, on each lines in the corner, and then I can use that French curve to draw those lines. So I can do that on the front. Now to keep that consistent, I also want to, I'll take my Sharpie, and on my very first one that I draw, my very first corner, I'll take my Sharpie marker and I'll make a reference mark on that clear French curve right there. That goes on my vertical line, so I know it's going to match my front, my back. And you could also do this where you do a front and then go ahead and just take your front and match it and draw out another pattern. You could do that too. And I just made my first marks for my curves on the bottom, and I don't want to do that yet because my bottom's narrower. So I just want to do that on the top. So I'll back up just a second, make sure I'm paying attention to what I'm doing here. So I want to make my curves on the top. I can flip that over for the other side. Again, if you don't want to actually make a front and a back pattern at the same time, you can make one of them and then just use it as the pattern for the other side. Or you could actually just make one if you want to and use it for the front, flip it, and use it for the back. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. It could save you time by not actually drawing out both, but that's up to you however you want to do it. I know my top is 5 inches wide, but my bottom, and I'm measuring from the widest point up here, and my bottom I'm going to measure from the narrowest point is 3 3/4 inches wide. That's at the narrowest point. So I want to go half of 5 is 2 1/2. So I'll mark my center at 2 1/2. Then half of 3 3/4 is going to be, half of 3 is 1 1/2. Half of 3/4 is 3/16. So you're looking at 1 11/16. So I'll mark those at 0. I'll put 1 11/16 at center, mark it at 0, mark it at 3 1/4. So that gives me the center of that. That's going to be my end. And that's at my smallest, narrowest point. So that's where I want to begin the rounded edge. And then as I round that, I can go ahead and go further if I want. I'll flip this over. Do the same thing on this side, and I can go further. I don't have to stop. I can just keep on going around that French curve. Then what I'm going to do is use my straight edge and come down from this, the top, where it meets the straight line, down to the bottom where it meets the curved line. I'll do that on both sides. And I think yeah, you could start to see we don't have as much curve here because this is more curved on the edge than the straight line. But you could go ahead and curve that if you'd want by using a French curve of some sorts, depending on what you want the curve to look like, and just match up your top line down to your bottom line. And again, you could mark it at the start and where you're going to stop. I'll show you how that works on the lines itself, and then go ahead and match those lines up. And here's your difference. Here's what it looks like between the straight line on this side right here and the curved straight line on that side. So there's your difference. So I think it looks much better with the curved line. So that's what I'm going to go with on my pattern. I'll flip my French curve over. And go ahead and draw my line. Now I have that on both sides. Now that you see what I was talking about, where you're building a front pattern and you're building a back pattern, I've already changed my mind on what I'm going to do, because I could keep drawing this back side out and making a pattern for the back, and when I get done, my curves may not match perfectly, or front may not match the back. So I'm going to continue doing the front, and then I'm going to use my front pattern to make my back pattern. So that way I know they're going to match perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and take my front and cut precisely on that line, which is going to take a little bit of patience. You don't want to get in a hurry when you're cutting out your pattern. Because I want to stay precisely on that line. You notice I keep turning my material. I'm not going to get up and move. I'm going to stay right in the exact same position. And then I can move my material. I can move it, slide it side to side, and rotate it as I cut. So I keep my hand and my knife blade pretty much in the same angle the entire time. So that I don't get uncomfortable cutting. Alright, so there is my front pattern. Let's see how close we are. Pretty close. So you could do that. If you wanted it straight, you could make it straight. That's really not gonna, it may make it just a little bit smaller, but it's, like I said, it's so universal as far as size goes. That's not going to make that big a difference at all. The next thing I can do, lay my front onto where I had my back pattern laid out, or I could just lay it on a brand new piece. It's not going to matter. And then I can go ahead and just trace, and that's what I'll do. I'll show you what I meant by saving myself some time and effort here. I can go ahead and just outline my back pattern with my front pattern. Or if you can remember and you mark front and back, you could use this for the front and the back. It doesn't really matter. It's the same size. Just one of them's going to have the slits in it. I don't know why. Maybe it's, I don't know, the way I'm wired, but I just like to have a pattern for each. It seems to help me keep things straight. I'd probably find myself, if I went to go look for this specific pattern again down the line, I'd probably find myself looking for the front and the back. That's just the way I am. But again, you want to simplify it even more, just mark it on one side as the front and the other side is the back. That way you have, you know, which finished side of your leather you're going to cut on. That would be the next thing, to make sure that I've done that before, where I'm thinking one way and I'm thinking the correct way, but I lay my pattern down on my leather and mark it, and come to find out I laid it on there upside down. I've got the rough side instead of the finished side that I wanted. So sometimes it can be a little confusing. So a lot of times I've learned by making the mistakes that I've made to kind of lay it down, take a look at it, think in my mind exactly how I'm going to cut it out, and then that gives me a really good idea whether I'm laying my pattern on there correctly or not. So there's the back side, and again, I'll mark it so that way I know, and I'll show you back. That'd be inside. So I like to mark these as I go so I don't get them mixed up. So they'd go back to back like so, and doing it that way, those patterns match up perfectly, instead of just, you know, using raw measurements and trying to get them to line up. So I'm going to mark this on this side. I marked it on the wrong side. So if you put those back to back, they just match up absolutely perfect because you made one pattern off of the other. So now I need to put my slits in. So that's going to go on the back side. So let's take a look at that and let's see where we're at as far as measurements. Comes down 3/4 of an inch from the top. So I'm going to mark it 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to draw that line all the way across. Then those slots, the bottom from the top is 2.5 inches. So I'll measure from the top down 2.5 inches on each side. Draw that line all the way across. That gives me my top and my bottom. So there's the top and the bottom for my slits for my belt. Then I want to come in from the side at the top. The center of that slot is 1 inch. So the center is 1 inch. I'll mark that. The center at the bottom from the edge is 1 1/8. So that's what gives it the slant. You got 1/8 of an inch difference, and I'm just going to draw that line. So we've got, I'm going to do the same on the other side. So we've got 1 inch and 1 1/8. Because we want those to be symmetrical from the edge or edges. So that's what it looks like. These vertical lines will be where my slots go, right here for my belt. So I want to look and see, those are 3/16 of an inch wide. So I want to make those 3/16 of an inch. And then go ahead and draw those lines. And then I'll show you how I'm going to cut that out so that it works out being my pattern to transfer over to my leather, and I get those rounded edges. Ended up, double check those. So I'll draw my lines. And then I'm going to take my 3/16 inch punch, and I'm going to actually punch right at the end, and that's what's going to make my pattern round at the end. So I'm not going to try to cut that or radius that. I'll just use my punch. That puts my holes in there so that I get a perfectly round edge or end. Then I can go ahead and take my straight edge and cut the inside part out. So I'll pop that out and I'll show you what that looks like on the back side. So you can see I have my belt slot now at the correct angle with the rounded ends. Cut the other side out. Pop it out. And there's both of them done. So that matches up with the front. So there's my back side with my belt slots, and there's my front side with no slots. Again, if you want to and you don't want to cut out both, you don't have to. If you can keep it straight or right on here and keep it straight, you could use this for the front, lay it on your leather, just do the outside. On the back, flip it over, do the outside, and then mark the slots. So it's up to you, however you want to do it. That's just the way I do it. It's a little extra work, but I seem to keep it straighter in my mind when I do it like that. So there's the pattern made for the universal holster that we're going to continue to make on the next episode. So make sure you come on back to the next episode as we continue this universal pistol holster project. And I appreciate you coming along, sharing these with me. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. For you that have, I appreciate it so much. Please, like I always say, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.